According to the new stack, Palantir and Nvidia are teaming up to tackle one of the most lucrative and defensible segments in artificial intelligence: sovereign, air-gapped government and critical infrastructure deployments. From an investor's perspective, this is not just a product announcement, it is a signal about where Palantir is positioning itself in the emerging AI value chain, and how it plans to defend and expand its moat against both hyperscalers and open-source challengers. Let's unpack what this means for Palantir's business, its differentiation, its risks, and ultimately how this could influence sentiment around the stock over the coming years. According to the new Stack News, the core idea is that building with AI has traditionally meant calling someone else's model through an external API. Think of OpenAI, Anthropic, or Google Cloud's Gemini. That pattern is easy and powerful, but it breaks down in environments where data cannot leave a secured perimeter: classified government networks, defense systems, grid operations, core banking, and sensitive healthcare records. For those environments, a public API endpoint in a commercial cloud provider may be a non-starter, either for legal, operational, or national security reasons. This is exactly the gap Palantir and Nvidia are aiming at. They are not just selling access to models, they are selling the ability for customers to fully own, deploy, and continuously improve AI models entirely inside their own locked-down environments. The new stack mentions that the revealing part of Palantir's announcement is what they did not do. Palantir did not simply ship another foundation model. Instead, they shipped what they describe as an intelligent engine built on NVIDIA AI and NVIDIA's Nemotron open-weight models. In other words, they are selling the apparatus and the operating system for sovereign AI, not just a single brain. For investors, this matters for a few reasons. First, it moves Palantir up the strategic stack. Instead of competing directly on which large language model is smarter, they frame the model as a component. The real product is the engine that manages deployment, governance, routing, telemetry, and continuous improvement inside air-gapped and sovereign networks. Second, it deepens the relationship with NVIDIA in a way that is aligned with NVIDIA's own incentives. NVIDIA wants to sell more GPUs and more AI enterprise software. Palantir wants to sell more platform subscriptions and services into governments and regulated industries. The sovereign AI narrative helps both, but it specifically plays to Palantir's strength in complex, high-compliance environments. Now, let's drill into what Nemotron is and why that choice matters. According to the new stack, Nemotron is NVIDIA's family of open-weight models, released in multiple sizes: a nano variant, a super variant, and an ultra variant. These models are large by parameter count, but they use a mixture of experts, hybrid Mamba transformer architecture that activates only a fraction of the parameters for each token. That makes them substantially cheaper to run than their raw size might suggest, while offering very large context windows. The strategic point here is not that Nemotron tops every leaderboard. In fact, the new stack notes that other open families, such as DeepSeek, Qwen, and Kimi-K-N, often score higher on absolute benchmarks. Nemotron's pitch is different: efficiency on NVIDIA hardware and genuine openness, including open weights and permissive licensing. For Palantir, that openness is crucial. If you are selling to governments and critical industries that care about sovereignty, auditability, and long-term control, you do not want to build your core offering on top of opaque, closed weights that you cannot fully inspect, move, or retrain. Nemotron gives Palantir a set of models that are optimized for NVIDIA GPUs and can be fully owned and controlled by the end customer. From a stock investor's angle, this positions Palantir as an orchestrator and lifecycle manager for open models inside secure networks. That is different from being just another consumer of third-party hosted AI APIs. It suggests Palantir is trying to lock in a category where hyperscaler commoditization is harder and where contracts tend to be large, sticky, and multi-year. According to the new stack, Palantir's contribution on top of Nemotron can be thought of in three main surfaces. The first surface is deployment. Palantir's engine is designed to get both base and customized models into air-gapped and classified environments. That is non-trivial. Moving large models, configuring them, and keeping them updated behind strict network and security barriers is hard, and there are substantial switching costs once a platform is embedded. The second surface is context. This includes prompt management, workflow orchestration, guardrails, and behavior shaping of the model in production. For Palantir, this ties directly into its existing AIP and Foundry stack, and especially its ontology layer, which maps organizational data into an interpretable and permissioned graph. That ontology is a key part of Palantir's moat. It is deeply embedded in how customers represent their data and workflows. The third surface is the model itself. Palantir describes the ability to change the weights on proprietary data and mission outcomes, to fine-tune and align the model on the tasks that matter most to that organization. Critically, the data and the modified weights remain under the customer's control. From a monetization perspective, each of these surfaces is an opportunity for long-term revenue, platform subscription, integration and customization work, model fine-tuning services, and ongoing support and evaluation. According to the new Stack News, Palantir also emphasizes a telemetry loop. The engine captures usage traces and performance data, then uses that to drive post-training, alignment, and continuous improvement. In principle, this makes the system self-improving, aligning more and more to the real-world tasks where it is frequently applied. For investors, this kind of loop is important for two reasons. First, it creates ongoing value expansion over time. As the model gets better for a specific mission, the customer becomes more reliant on it, opening the door to higher usage and deeper integration. Second, it raises the complexity barrier for competitors. Running such a feedback pipeline reliably inside an air-gapped, regulated environment requires evaluation harnesses, safety checks, rollback strategies, and governance mechanisms. That is operationally heavy and plays to Palantir's positioning as a partner for complex, mission-critical deployments, not just a toolkit vendor. However, the new stack rightly highlights a major caveat. Owning the stack means owning everything around it. From the buyer's standpoint, choosing to own and operate your own models is not a trivial decision. It implies significant capital expenditure on GPUs, power, and cooling. It demands in-house or contracted expertise to manage model lifecycle, security, and performance. It requires teams to run fine-tuning, evaluation, incident response, and compliance. Ultra-scale models are especially resource-hungry. Even with mixture of experts activation that only lights up a fraction of the parameters per token, you are still talking about multi-GPU server nodes and serious infrastructure. From an investor lens, this cuts both ways for Palantir. On one side, the high cost and complexity of sovereign AI deployments makes deals larger and stickier. Once an agency or enterprise commits to building this stack, they are unlikely to rip it out easily. That aligns with Palantir's history of long sales cycles followed by deep, high-margin relationships. On the other side, it limits the addressable market to organizations that can justify that investment. Some commercial enterprises, especially cost-sensitive or mid-market players, may prefer hosted APIs from cloud providers rather than building an internal AI platform. The new stack mentions that, for agencies legally barred from using hosted APIs, the math is simple. Sovereign AI is a requirement, not an option. For commercial firms that could use hosted endpoints, it becomes a trade-off between control and CapEx. This insight is important for anyone analyzing Palantir's growth potential. It suggests that Palantir's sweet spot remains the high-compliance, high-stakes segment, defense, intelligence, national security, critical infrastructure, and heavily regulated finance and healthcare. These are exactly the areas where Palantir already has relationships and where deal sizes can be very meaningful. Now, how does this change the competitive landscape? According to the new stack, the announcement is essentially packaging and positioning rather than a technical breakthrough. Nvidia sells more GPUs and AI enterprise licenses. Palantir sells more of its AIP, Ontology, Foundry, and Apollo stack. The product is an integrated sovereign AI engine using Nemotron models, optimized for Nvidia hardware, deployed and governed by Palantir's platform. There are no named government customers or contract values attached to this specific announcement. There are no public benchmarks demonstrating Nemotron outperforming every alternative. Instead, the value here lies in the go-to-market strategy and the bundling of capabilities. For stock watchers, that means this news should not be treated as evidence of an immediate revenue spike, but as another data point in Palantir's long-term narrative, evolving from a data platform and consulting-heavy business into a standardized AI operating system for mission-critical environments. It is also worth considering the broader industry context. According to the new Stack News, similar patterns are emerging outside government, finance, healthcare, and manufacturing are all facing data residency and compliance constraints that make pure cloud APIs unattractive for their most sensitive workloads. Open models have become good enough for many production uses. Mixture of experts architectures and modern inference stacks, such as NVIDIA NIM, TensorRT LLM, VLM, XGLang, Llama, CPP, and Allama, have made it practical to run sophisticated models on-premise with reasonable efficiency. That, combined with open licensing and transparent training data, makes sovereign deployments far more feasible than they were a few years ago. In this environment, the new stack underlines a crucial shift. as open models converge toward parity for many enterprise tasks, differentiation moves away from the base model itself and toward everything around it. That includes deployment and routing, security, governance, observability, evaluation, and lifecycle management. Palantir is betting that it can be the default engine for exactly that outer layer, particularly in sovereign and regulated settings. If that bet pays off, the company could occupy a defensible, high-margin niche above the raw model and below custom applications, similar in spirit to how some security vendors or data platforms act as central control planes for entire organizations. Now, let's translate all of this into potential implications for Palantir's stock and investor sentiment. First, this announcement reinforces Palantir's positioning as a strategic partner for governments in the age of AI. The narrative around sovereign AI, national security, and control over data and weights taps directly into geopolitical and regulatory concerns that are unlikely to fade. If governments increasingly see open, sovereign AI infrastructure as a national security imperative, vendors that can deliver end-to-end stacks in air-gapped environments will be heavily favored. Palantir and Nvidia are clearly positioning themselves to be frontrunners in that category. Second, the Nvidia partnership itself is a signal. Nvidia sits at the center of the AI hardware and software ecosystem. Being highlighted as an early Nemotron adopter and as a partner in sovereign AI engines gives Palantir additional legitimacy in the broader enterprise AI conversation. For investors, that strengthens the argument that Palantir is not just a legacy defense analytics company, but a core player in AI infrastructure. Third, this deal highlights both upside and execution risk. On the upside, if Palantir successfully standardizes an engine that becomes the default for sovereign AI in multiple governments and industries, the long-term revenue streams could be substantial, recurring, and highly profitable. Each deployment could involve not only software subscriptions, but also ongoing model lifecycle services, integrations, and expansions into new use cases within the same customer. On the risk side, Palantir must prove that it can scale these offerings beyond a handful of flagship deployments. The complexity of sovereign AI and the need for specialized talent could cap the pace of rollout. Competition will also be intense. Large cloud providers, defense primes, and open-source ecosystems are all vying for the same budgets, and some customers may prefer to build more of the stack themselves. Moreover, because this announcement does not come with disclosed deal sizes or named customers, investors will need to watch Palantir's future earnings calls and filings for concrete signals, growth in government and regulated industry bookings, references to Nemotron-based deployments, expansion of AI platform revenue, and changes in margins as AI workloads scale. For enthusiasts following Palantir, this development also clarifies the company's strategic philosophy around AI. According to the new stack, Palantir CEO Alex Karp emphasizes that many U.S. clients already use these kinds of models and that customers want to avoid having their proprietary insights baked into closed, third-party weights. Nvidia's Jensen Huang frames open source as foundational to national security. Those statements are not just marketing, they reflect a broader shift in how governments and critical enterprises view AI. The ability to inspect, audit, and control the models that shape key decisions is becoming a strategic requirement. Palantir is aligning itself with that worldview. So, how might all of this influence how investors think about Palantir over the medium term? First, this strengthens the long-term bull thesis that Palantir will be a core infrastructure provider for AI in mission-critical settings. Second, it raises the bar on execution. The company must demonstrate that sovereign AI engines are not just prototypes or pilots, but scalable, repeatable products that can be sold across agencies and industries. Third, it emphasizes the importance of tracking not only revenue growth, but also depth of integration. The more Palantir's Ontology, AIP, and AI engines become embedded in day-to-day government operations, the stronger the company's moat and pricing power become. Finally, investors should keep in mind that this is still an early move in a fast-changing landscape. Open weight models are improving rapidly. Evaluation standards are evolving. Regulatory frameworks for AI in defense and critical infrastructure are still being formed. There will be noise and volatility along the way. But at a strategic level, this announcement confirms that Palantir is not content to be a passive consumer of other people's models. It wants to be the platform through which governments and critical enterprises own, operate, and continuously improve their own AI capabilities, with Nvidia as the hardware and base model backbone. According to the new stack, in this emerging world, the model becomes a component, and the engine becomes the product. For Palantir investors, the question is whether that engine can become the standard operating layer for sovereign AI, and whether the company can convert that position into durable, compounding cash flows. That's all for today's episode. Thank you for listening, and if you found this analysis useful, consider subscribing so you don't miss future deep dives.